Hi everyone, Irit here with a new process video for Pink and Paper. So this is the second layout this month that I'm creating with the Cocoa Vanilla Boys Rule collection, and I'm sorry about the crazy hand gestures. Super sorry about that. I actually started recording this real time for Patreon, and I have to say at some point I was just finding it so challenging to be entertaining and chat about things while creating this layout. I think the problem is that because it's a project for a design team, then I want it to be, you know, as perfect as it can be. And apparently I'm not very good at multitasking, so yeah, but at some point I think from now on it's okay, and maybe a few more crazy hand gestures, but at some point it really I just record it for the process without talking. So really sorry about that, but should be smoother sailing. Oh, there I go again. Smoother sailing from now on. So this layout is going to be very monochromatic. And what I really wanted to do was, I didn't know what I was going to do. In my head, I thought about maybe creating some circular elements from the pattern paper and using that as kind of design elements / embellishments. And then I thought I would do kind of the same thing with stars, and you'll see me do that. But at the end, I don't know, I just couldn't make it work. I really tried. I really like the concept, and I liked it on a theoretical level. Maybe I'll try it again, but it just wasn't looking the way I wanted it to look, even though I really like how these stars turned out. I was also having lots of fun with my old and then new silhouette mat. So yeah, it was just, you know, it wasn't smooth sailing, this layout, and yeah, but I really like how it turned out. And at the end, the finished layout you can probably do in about 10 minutes. So super simple, but process videos are all about the process. So I don't think I kept the whole thing in, so you can see it. And yeah, here I am talking about this. So I haven't thought ahead of time what I want to chat about. I think this will be a chatty video, and I did have just a very general idea which I thought could be fun to talk about the different things, or like new to me things that I noticed in the houses in Austria. So again, a little recap. I'm sure most of you know I moved to Austria in 2011 it was, and I'm originally from Israel. And you know, while both countries are, I would say, modern countries, first world countries, there are always these differences, and it's just a lot of things that you don't really pay attention until you actually live in a place. So I think the first thing that you probably would notice when you go into an Austrian apartment or house is that people take their shoes off. And in Israel, we don't really do that. I mean, people also have, you know, house shoes or slippers or whatever, but it's not a thing that the moment you enter the house, you take your shoes off. But here it is. And I have to say that while at the beginning it was a little bit not weird to me, but just not something I was really used to. And especially at home, it's like one thing. But when you go to a friend's house or an acquaintance or something and you have to take your shoes off, well, first of all, you need to start thinking about your, you know, sock choices, or manicure situation, or hair removal situation in your legs, and all that sort of things. So it was something that I got used to pretty fast, but it's also one of those things that it's really hard to go back, because now when I think about, entering the house with my shoes, and not that my house is sterile or super, super clean, it's really not, but something about dragging in all the stuff you step into your house, I really, really find it hard now to like run around the house with my outside shoes. So usually people here have like house shoes, they're called pachen or house schuhe, and many times they also have these for guests. So you just have like, they sell these in IKEA or IKEA, and you can get them pretty much everywhere. So you would have kind of a really simple version for guests, so guests can wear them when they come. And I actually really, really like this thing. And also for kids we have it. So for example, in daycare and kindergarten and even schools, we didn't have that in Israel. And what I'm going to say is that there's like a wardrobe in all these places, and the kids have their pachen, so they come into the school or into the kindergarten with their regular shoes, and then they leave their shoes in the wardrobe room, and then they go into class or into the kindergarten with these house shoes. And yeah, here in Austria, there's a lot of it rains throughout the year. And of course, in the winter it snows. I know it doesn't snow everywhere in the world. So in the winter it snows. So yes, there are a lot of days where your shoes will get dirty. So it makes a lot of sense. But also in Israel, where I live, there's also winter, there's also mud, there's also rain. We don't really get snow. Maybe in Jerusalem, like once a year. But so you still get your shoes dirty, but I don't remember having, Ella only went to daycare in Israel for a few months before we left to Austria, and I don't remember that they had their, like slippers for inside. And I know for sure that we didn't have that in school. So that's kind of interesting. I think it's nice. I'm sure that, it keeps the classrooms or kindergarten spaces cleaner when you don't have dozens of kids, going in them with their dirty shoes. So yeah, I think that was one thing in Austria that I really noticed that was different from where I come from. And another thing is the fridge. So this, of course, varies, but I would say, in general, the refrigerators, from what I've seen in the US, for example, I would say they are on the edge of the scale, large refrigerators. Then Israel is probably getting closer and closer to the American sizes measurements when it comes to refrigerators. And like when I grew up, we had the standard size, and I noticed in the last, let's say, couple of decades, we also got in Israel like the side-by-side fridges and just these ever-growing fridges. So I would say we are approaching, in Israel, the American standards. And in Austria, I would say it's on the other scale, on the other side of the scale, with really small refrigerators. Again, this varies, but from what I've seen, and you go into stores and you see the variety, and yes, there are also large refrigerators here, as large as the American ones and the Israeli ones, but the standard in, I would say, most, like, maybe with new houses that are being built, it's different, but our refrigerator is tiny. It's tiny. It's like really tiny. I don't know. I'm trying to think about the sizes, but I only have the sizes in centimeters. It was because we recently bought one because our old one was broken, and I think 80 something centimeters tall, which I'm trying to calculate it in inches. and I'm trying to base it on scrapbooking size because that's what I know. So 30 centimeters is about 12 inches. So 80 centimeters would be around, I don't know, like 50 inches, something like that. Don't catch me on that. So that's the height. And then I think it was, I don't know, like 50 something centimeters wide. So probably 25 inches wide, something like that. I don't know. They're tiny. Tiny, tiny, tiny fridges. And I have to say, you know, we manage. People here go shopping very frequently, as I'm guessing, as opposed to like weekly. I think I go to the supermarket probably every other day and just buy a few things. So we kind of make it work. What I do find a bit challenging is, you know, if I want to do some meal prepping, or if I want to cook for like ahead for a few days, sometimes it gets challenging with space in the fridge, but I'm pretty sure I could make it work. It's just in my family, people don't like to eat the same thing for a few days. I don't have a problem with it, but my husband prefers, you know, like fresh food, and also my daughter, she doesn't like eating something like 2 days in a row. So they're spoiled people. Let's just say it like it is. They are spoiled. And yeah, so I don't do a lot of meal prep. Anyway, the tiny fridge worked. And when we moved to our current house, the deep freezer, or like the freezer that we had, was actually in the tiny fridge. So there was a compartment which I'm guessing you could fit like, I don't know, 3 boxes of ice cream. And that was our freezer. And that we pretty fast, we bought like a freestanding freezer that is, you know, kind of the height of a small person. And we put that in the basement because that was rough, you know. It was so tiny. And it is a bit annoying that I have to like go down the stairs every time I want to get something out of the freezer, but it keeps me in shape because I hate working out. So no, we make it work, but yeah, it's quite an adjustment to suddenly have a tiny, tiny fridge. And there is another difference that I think I won't share with you on a scrapbooking video because it involves toilets. And I just don't think we should be talking about this now. But yeah, there is a somewhat of a difference, and I have to say I prefer the Israeli toilets. So I'm not going to go into that now. Anyway, what else? The windows here, and in general, I would say the houses are better insulated in Austria. But, you know, that also has to do with the fact that it gets a lot colder here. So it just makes sense. You know, it makes things more expensive. Obviously, like windows are more expensive if they are double glazed and all that stuff. And in Israel, because the weather is very moderate, the houses are pretty much not insulated at all. I mean, it's very... The temperature outside is the temperature inside, and, you know, you switch on the air condition in the summer, and when you switch it off after like 10 minutes, it's hot again. So, yeah, and here in our house, we actually have like 3 floors now in Austria, and like a basement, half basement floor, and then 2 floors. And in the basement, it's always really, really cool. Like, yeah, very cool. Also in the summer when it's really hot. And then it gets a little bit hotter on every floor. So the main floor with the kitchen and the living room and all that is pretty pleasant. And then the upstairs where we have our bedrooms, when it's really hot, it gets hotter here. But we don't have an air conditioner. And while I do notice that the summers are becoming hotter and hotter, even in just, you know, the 7 years that I've lived here, when we moved here, I remember like the first couple of summers, there was maybe like 1 week during the whole summer that was, you know, really blistering hot, like over 30 degrees Celsius really, really, really hot. And now in the last few years, you can get to up to like a month of that really, really blistering hot heat type of weather. So it is changing, but we still don't have air conditions at home, and or at least in most houses. I mean, first of all, because as I've said, the houses are better insulated, so you don't need it. But also when it gets hot, and also when it gets hot in the house, I don't know, we go and take a shower or something. We are just better, I guess. We're used to it, and I would say whenever then I go and visit Israel, and usually I also go and visit during the summer, I freeze everywhere indoors. The air conditioners are just freezing. They don't cool down the spaces to, a pleasant temperature. You just freeze. I remember last summer we went to Tel Aviv and we went to the cinema, and they actually, in August, it's like 35 degrees every single day outside. And they actually rent you blankets in the cinema because it's so cold. Now, I already know this, and also in August in Israel, I walk around with a sweater everywhere, which is ridiculous. And I think these things are just bad because your body adjusts to it, and these extreme changes of temperature, You go everywhere indoors, it's like 18 degrees. Then you go outside, it's 35. It makes it harder, and your body gets used to all the freezing air conditioners, and you become less and less tolerant. You tolerate the hot temp. It's harder to tolerate the hot temperatures. So I don't see that as a good development. And on the other hand, here in Austria, I would say that during the winter, places are just completely overheated. So same thing, just in winter. I usually dress. It's like for Israelis, when they go to Europe, usually they're not used to the cold temperatures, and people always recommend to dress in the onion system. So, have a lot of layers, so you can just peel one layer at a time if you need it. But I recommend to everyone that do like a city tour or something, especially in Austria, get the warmest coat you can find, the really best coat that can handle minus 10, 15 degrees. And then underneath it, just wear a light sweater, because you go into places and you start to sweat like a dog. It's like indoors, it's like 25 degrees, and outside it can be minus 10. And yeah, you don't need all these extra layers once you go in. You go into a coffee house, you melt. So yeah. First world problems, air conditions that cool too much, and heating systems. So yeah, and of course, I would say in every house in Israel, you have air conditioners everywhere. And in Austria, I haven't seen that much, but in every house, you will have a central heating system. I think mostly they run on oil. Ours does. We have this ginormous tank of oil in the basement, which also is something like very new to me. And some work on wood, which I think is really beautiful. If I ever built like my dream house here, which I don't think I ever will because I'm too lazy for that, but I would like, a wooden fireplace. And yeah, that's very cute and romantic. And there is a lot of wood here. So I think I'm not sure which is the best system for the environment, but I also know that they have now smart houses, which obviously they cost more to build, but I think they have like really sophisticated climate control systems that use the, temperature differences and all kinds of things. And then your energy costs are really, really low. And of course, you can invest in solar panels. And I think the state helps you like subsidize the costs. And then you can actually sell back the extra energy that you're not using. So all kinds of interesting things now with energy. I find the whole thing quite fascinating. And we'll see where, time brings us as oil becomes more and more expensive to buy. And yeah, that's it. So you saw all the different designs that I had going on, but this is the finished one. I'm really happy with how it turned out, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Tell me about weird things in your land. Bye.